Hello, everybody. I'm Sean Reynolds from Sportsnet, joined by Ken Weeb from Sportsnet. Together, we are Kenny and Renny, and this is our weekly long form show after taking a break last week. We're back, and we thought, because we took the show away last week, we needed to make today's a barn burner, and we feel we've done just that because we're going to have longtime voice of the Winnipeg Jets, recently retired voice of the Winnipeg Jets, Dennis Beyak is going to be joining us right away. We are so excited for this. This is again one of those like Marvel DC universe kind of crossover events here, and now it's a little easier to do now that Dennis technically isn't full sail with TSN. I don't think that would have stopped us any other time, anyways, Ken. But really excited to have him on, kind of talk about his career, Jets, all that kind of stuff. Perfect guy to do it. Perfect timeliness for it. And Ken, you're really good friends with Dennis, not just from the years that you guys have worked together, but from working with each other, from traveling on the road. How excited are you for this one?
Yeah, it's great. It's a great any time with Dennis is a great opportunity. I was fortunate enough to be privy to a couple of the events on the weekend. TSN and their production staff had a big little shaker for him at the Delta the other night on Friday, and then there was a really nice dinner on Sunday after the game. So yeah, it was nice to be able to spend a little bit of time around there. And I know it was a very emotional time for Dennis. He's a very popular individual, and this isn't one of those easy type of decisions. He's been around the game and the industry for a long time, and he's grown close with a lot of people. And it can be overwhelming when you are showered with praise and constantly being told how great you are. Dennis is a very humble man, but worthy of all that praise. So it was great to see him celebrated in that manner, I think. And love the fact that he got to read the lineup the other night and share a couple of his share his passion with those players. And yeah, just the opportunity to again, like I said, to spend some time over is going to be absolutely fantastic. He's certainly going to be missed around these parts, but I mean, he'll still be making his way around the rink. That's something that I don't think will be something that's going to leave his personality. He loves the game so much. If he loves the community, he's gonna make a few visits and just be able to relax a bit more and enjoy the rest of the ride. I mean, he's traveled for a very long time, covering first even back with the Flin Flon Bombers and the Western League and the NHL now here. So going to be fabulous to have him spend some time. And yeah, it's really good. And it was also great to see the reaction in the rink. We've seen a couple of these moments. Bob Cole obviously had some special moments during his sort of retirement tour, and to see the way the crowd got on their feet for Dennis on Sunday was pretty cool to see. And then he got himself a bang bang and a bang 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 finish as well, which again, that's great for him.
It was interesting. I don't know if anything was said, but I just remembered thinking in the second intermission of that game, the Jets down, what was the score? 3-1. And
Yeah.
I was just thinking to myself, you know what? They owe this to Dennis. They owe it to Dennis. I know this is garbage time. I know this is meaningless, but they owe it to Dennis to give him one last send off. I'm so happy that the Jets were able to pull that off. I'm so happy they turned the last moment of Dennis's career calling Winnipeg Jets games into something that allowed him to, show us again what made him so special, what continues to make him so special, because he's still going to continue calling some events here and there. It was nice it happened like that. That was good stuff. Storybook ending, I thought, to a degree. Comet asks, "What are the rules on gushing?" Lynn Reimer's got it right here. No limits on gushing, or I will be in trouble. Gush away, everybody in the chat room. It has been earned. And the other part about it is, to your point, Ken, Dennis is one of those guys who doesn't necessarily he gets a little uncomfortable when people gush around him, and those are the people I love when people gush around them most. I love to see people squirm when people are throwing adoration at them. So that's good. Let's make him squirm when he gets here, everybody. Just absolutely make Dennis squirm with love. That's the best way to do this. Ken, let's talk a little bit about the playoffs and what we've seen so far. What stands out to you?
Well, first and foremost, the team that you picked to win the cup is looking very good, and the teams that I picked to be in the final are not even in the tournament. So you can gush about that as well. And otherwise, interesting starts. I mean, most of the series are tight, other than obviously Carolina is off to a fantastic start. Edmonton kind of got themselves up off the mat, but I mean, it's split for the LA Kings. Todd McClellan would be thrilled with that. The Minnesota Wild responded very impressively, as did the defending two-time champion Tampa Bay Lightning. A couple more interesting games on the horizon here. Obviously, the Dallas Stars played well in Game 1, but the Flames were very tight checking, and they were my new Stanley Cup pick, and we'll see how that series develops. But the Flames looked really good defensively, so impressive. What about yourself? What stood out so far to you?
Well, it's funny. Every time I make my playoff picks, I always go into it and I make these picks and I think to myself, like, of course this team's going to win. Like, it always looks obvious to me, right? And I look around at people who make different picks than me. Like, I think you and I are different on the St. Louis and the Minnesota series. And I was like, when you pick that, I'm like, what's this guy thinking? You know what I mean? Like, to me, it always feels like it's so obvious. And then I took a look and I saw after Game 1 of all 8 series, I ended up going 50-50, right? I had half the first games right, half the first games wrong. I'm happy to say that that Game 2 last night, my first night, I'd gone 1 for 3 in those series, or the teams that I picked had gone 1 for 3, and they all kind of corrected that this second time around. Did you have Boston or Carolina? Didn't you have Boston?
I picked Boston in 7. Yeah. Man, I thought, again, there's always one upset, and I know that Boston struggled against Carolina this year. I just thought that with Carolina not having Freddie Anderson, that they could be susceptible in goal, but they quickly reminded us how great they are defensively. Yeah. And man, oh man, I mean, it's not the old Bruins. I mean, Svechnikov absolutely drills Hampus Lindholm and knocks him out of Game 3, right? It's not the bad Bruins. The Carolina Hurricanes are everything that a playoff team needs to be. They have skill, but they grind you down. They dump again, Jeff Merrick was talking about it on his show today. They lead the league in dump-ins and retrievals. So for all the people saying, oh, dump and chase hockey doesn't work anymore, well, there is evidence to the contrary by one of the analytical darlings, but it's because of how they dump the puck in and retrieve it and chase it and all of those things. So they've been incredibly impressive, and boy, oh boy, they're only going to get better when Freddie Anderson is ready. They're on their third string goalie, and it doesn't even bother them one bit. You could have thrown LaFontaine in there last night, and it probably wouldn't have made a difference.
Yeah, I love the idea behind the Carolina Hurricanes, in that they're built, and all the game, each individual's game is built to resemble that of their coach, Rod Brindamore, who was a winner, straight up, period, end of sentence. But what I love about what he's done there is he seems to have taken each of these different players with their individual skill sets and didn't take away from those individual skill sets, but just kind of built in that dogged tenacity that he had in his game, and they all play that and then add what they bring to the table as well. It's a brilliant idea. I think you got to be an unbelievably smart coach to pull that off, but boy, oh boy, he's done that there. They're an interesting team to watch. I have them, I believe, going to the conference finals, but I don't have them getting past Florida. We'll see if Florida can wake up or if they panic after what happened. Anyways, let's get at it. It's time to bring in the man of the hour, the man of the year for all of us, the man of the last 11 years, honestly. Here's Dennis Beyak. It is great to see you. We're so happy to finally get you on Kenny and Renny. It's taken so long. Now, I know, Dennis, that I've read some of the articles. I know some of the ideas that you have behind why you are retiring. My question is, why now? Because I know a big part of this is you want to make sure that you're going out on top. I don't see any cracks in your game, Dennis. Why would you leave now when you seem to be humming along as good as you ever have?
Well, I only had one thing left in my broadcast career, and that was to be on Kenny and Renny. So, see ya. I'm out of here. Mic drop. Gone. Really, there isn't one or two main reasons. When you get to a certain age, and I turned 70 in November, and started thinking about it, and it just kind of went from there. And then a lot of things, the pandemic, certainly the last number of years, hasn't helped. Getting events canceled hasn't helped, whether it was the World Junior, whether it was the Olympics, another winter vacation, gone. Turned around there, it was gone. But really, just a lot of little things. But, the bottom line was it was getting to be time. I never wanted to get to the point where I said to myself, I should have gone last year. And I just thought the timing was right. And it was 11 terrific years, maybe longer than I expected to stay working, but I was having lots of fun. And to be honest, from the time I get into the booth until the end of the game, love it. Absolutely love it. The travel eventually starts to become a little taxing, despite the fact we're on the charters. You don't sleep as good in hotels as you get older, and all those little things that go along with it. But really nothing, no main one or two reasons other than it was just simply time.
Dennis, we'll get back to the beginning in a second, but just curious, I know we've talked about it a little bit privately, but what was the weekend like? Obviously every time from the announcement and it coming out to the end of game and everything else on Sunday that went along with it. What was it like to deal with those emotions? And I know sometimes it is uncomfortable to deal with some of that adulation that was there with that outpouring of love and support for you.
You never know what to expect. And you said it, Kevin Pratt, your old college roommate, who's our producer, said it, expect this. And I didn't expect that. And I got that. And it's humbling. It was overwhelming at times. I tried to keep up with all the text messages and the emails and the phone calls. The announcement came out Thursday at noon our time here in Winnipeg. And I don't think I left this office chair until 6:30 or 6:45 at night. And I heard from so many people, people that I hadn't connected with in a number of years. And then it calmed down a little bit on Friday, which was great because we had a game to do. And then, Saturday was all right. And then Sunday and into Monday, it was, again, just overwhelming and very humbling and all the other words that can go along with it. I heard from some people that, I heard from a gentleman by the name of Reg Johns that I worked with in Flin Flon in 1971. And so he was there for the start of that. I heard for people who were from the Western Hockey League from all my days there, NHL people, and on it goes. And Robert De Niro once told me not to be a name dropper, so I'm not going to get into all the ones that I did hear from. But it was I do have to make jokes about it every once in a while, or else I kind of get emotional. But it was special.
Well, I'll tell you, people, he did do a good job of getting back to text, getting back to text, because even old Renny here got a text back from Dennis when I sent him a congratulations, and I'm at the very bottom of the pyramid, people, and he got to me pretty quick. So, hey, Dennis, I was wondering for you, what do you look at right now and think is going to be the toughest thing to leave behind about the lifestyle?
Well, I think it's going to be the people. I'll miss the games. There's no doubt. I said that a little while ago. From the time I get into the booth until the end of the game, I love that part. And that's always been special. I think you get into your little domain, and you guys know this. You get into your little domain, and if you're prepared for the game, and that's key, as long as you're in your own mind, you can look yourself and say you're prepared for the game. It's nice, it's peaceful, it's quiet. Let's get going. So I'll miss that part. I'll miss the people. I'll miss walking into other rinks and seeing other broadcasters and other media people, hockey people. I'll miss traveling with the crew that we traveled with. I'll miss going for dinners. I'll miss having chats with Kevin Sawyer before every game, Sarah Orlesky before the game and after the game. What are we going to talk about tonight? Here's what we're going to do. How did it go? All that. I'll miss walking into the press box, at Canada Life Center and seeing all the familiar faces there, whether it be the off-ice officials, whether it be other media people. So when all is said and done, I think it's the people that you miss. And I will miss the game. I'm not going to deny that. But I will also miss the people, because when I go back to whether it be the Western Hockey League, whether it be back in junior when I worked in radio and television and did games there. It's all about the people that you come across and the friendships that you create and the people you stay in contact with.
Dennis, that preparation process, I mean, how did that evolve? Obviously, from 1970 to now, I mean, everyone does things differently, but how did you get into it initially on that? And then, I love it. He's gonna get the book out. This is live TV at its finest.
You mean this sheet here?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
It has a whole bunch of chicken scratch on it.
It only has to make sense to you. It only has to make sense to you.
The 7 behind a player means that's how many goals he has. If there's a 3 circle, it's power play goals. If it's got a square around it, it's shorthanded goals. Don't ask me how that started. Somewhere along the lines, and I write everything out other than the lineup, and I do that not because I don't own a computer. I do it because I remember it better. I find if I write something out, if I research it, write it out, it stays fresher in my mind than simply typing it out. And everybody has his own style. There are people who have a basic lineup sheet that tells you the size of the player, where he's from, where he was drafted, where he played junior or college, and then everything else is on another sheet. I prefer to have the majority of my information on one sheet. I'll be honest, with Kyle Connor, I had to develop a part of my other on my other sheet. I had to develop a part on there because there were just so many things to talk about with him. But I guess it started way back in junior, probably even in Flin Flon. Now, things have evolved, obviously, you guys know. And I mean, I don't know what we talked about. When I did junior games by myself, I don't know what I talked about. There was no game notes like we have today. You couldn't get on the internet and find out where a guy played minor hockey or where he played this or who he was related to or what his stats were. There was none of that. So I don't know what we filled 3 hours of airtime with. But we did, and I basically have used that, but that same system going all the way back to when I started, and I guess I just kind of felt it was easy. I knew where everything was, and away I went.
Dennis, if those old shows of yours were anything like our K&R shows, there's a lot of BS that you fill the time at. That's what we do here. I think this is an important question. So we just had a color guy come in for one of our Hockey Night in Canada games. He had the same thing, big sheet of preparation. And it's funny, I was listening to him as the game went on. He was fairly new. And you could see he was living in that sheet, right? And at some point, he just abandoned the sheet and he got into the game and just it opened up and everything went a lot better from there. I'm not saying that there's no room for preparation, but what I'm saying is you got to be able to have that sheet and know when to go with it, but know when to live in the game. I'm wondering how you found that balance and when you kind of felt you locked that balance in for yourself.
A good night is when you, at the end of the night, look at your sheet and you've used maybe 15 or 20% of it. That's a good night because you know then you had a good hockey game. Other nights where the game doesn't carry itself, maybe you'll use 35 or 40%. I don't think I have ever come close to using even 65 or 70% of the information that I have written down going into the game. And because you're bang on, you can get caught up in numbers, you can get caught up on statistics, and different on radio maybe than television. Television, if it's a really good statistic, then you better have numbers on the screen to support it and back it up. And people need to find where their comfort level is. I remember years ago doing, and it was a person who it was the first game as being an analyst, and came in with a sheet that was probably cardboard 3 feet by 3 feet. One team was on one side, the other team was on the other side. And when it came to talking about it, you're flipping the sheet over and the same thing. A few minutes into the game, abandoned, talk about, especially from an analyst standpoint, talk about what you know and what you see on the ice. And it takes a while to get to that comfort level for them. And really, their job is harder than the play-by-play guys. I mean, I've got a script to follow. My script is developing right in front of me on the ice, and all you got to do is tell people what you're seeing and try and describe it as best you can. So, yeah, everybody finds their comfort level. Knows what you can and what you can't do, and see what fits. But you never know when something that you never thought you were going to use during the game, something will happen in that game where you'll say, "Hey, I've got something on that." And I think again it goes back to junior because you're doing games by yourself, and we all remember cases of a broken glass, broken Zamboni. So you've got this long stoppage in play, and that's where you pull out the old Western Hockey League schedule and you say, well, let's have a look and see what's on tap this weekend in the Western Hockey League. The next thing you know, you've killed 4 minutes. So, but yeah, everybody has to find a comfort level, no doubt.
Dennis, like Sean and myself, you're a proud Manitoban. How did hockey become your passion growing up in Winnipeg, OSIS?
Well, it's an interesting story. At least I find it somewhat interesting. Neighbors probably didn't find it that interesting maybe at the time. My brother and I played ball hockey like everybody else did. And I was the goaltender and the play-by-play guy. And which now when you think of it, you could add I was the referee, I was the video goal judge. I could just say it didn't go in. But there were 6 teams in the National Hockey League, and somewhere along the lines in my younger years, I fell in love with the game of hockey, and I still really enjoy the game. But that's where the play-by-play started. Play-by-play started with playing ball hockey in the wintertime, and there were 6 teams in the NHL. I basically knew 90% of the line combinations. When it went past a certain point, that meant the other team was coming back in, and we'd play for hours. And the neighbors used to talk about it. In the winter nights in Manitoba, as you well know, my voice carries on its own at a chilly winter night in rural Manitoba, and it carries for a while. So, but that's really where it got going, and then it just kind of went from there. I mean, I played a little bit. I had a chance to go to a Dauphin Kings camp one year. It happened right in the middle of harvest, so that was the end of that. I grew up on a farm. That was the end of that, and then went on to Flin Flon, and Bruce Keddy, the newspaper writer, was doing play-by-play at the time because they didn't have anybody who was interested in it. And then he wasn't able to do a game, so I jumped behind the microphone, and away it went from there. And then on to Saskatoon, and then I got out of broadcasting into hockey, and then back into broadcasting. But that's where it all started. It really did start on a farm in Rice Lake, playing ball hockey with my brother.
We're going to follow that road and the road that you took to get to where you are now. I'm going to kind of start it a little bit at the end because I think it's a good way of getting back to the beginning. You wouldn't have come back, obviously, if the Winnipeg Jets hadn't come back. But I always got this sense from you of how proud of a Manitoban you were. And it kind of felt to me like you and I haven't had a deep conversation about this, but it felt to me like if you had a chance, you were going to come back and you were going to represent this area. I've traveled a lot. I've lived in a lot of different places. Something always pulls me back to Manitoba. And sometimes I don't even know what it is, but something has always pulled me back here. And I wonder if a little bit of that exists in you and what it is maybe about growing up in Rice Lake and in that area and the experiences you had as a kid growing up as a Manitoban that may have, if I'm guessing right, created a pull that always kind of wanted to pull you back to this province.
Well, I think we were proud of our province, whether it be from just a general standpoint, because that's where we were born and raised. But you also, from a sports standpoint, as you started to get a little bit older, there was the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and I remember listening to those games on radio. And then when the Jets came along, I mean, it hurt all of us when the Winnipeg Jets left. I think we all felt that something left us, and it did. There was no longer were you going to see NHL players come to your city and all that. So I happen to be going through Winnipeg. Still have plenty of relatives here. The lady sitting beside Bev at the game who couldn't turn the waterworks off. That was my niece, Shauna. And, they live here. They've got two great little boys, her and Paul. I've got cousins in town here. So I was going through in May when the rumor started that the True North was going to buy the Atlanta Thrashers. And so then we left on our way to Kelowna, but, I stayed on top of it. And, that's kind of where it started. And the drive out, I remember in Kelowna watching the celebration, the Congo line that was on, and that I think it was even raining a little bit. It was a kind of a chilly day. And that's where it kind of got going. But even on the drive out, in your mind, you're thinking, okay, if this happens, would you do this? And coincidentally, things were changing in Toronto. The TV rights were changing, so I wasn't really 100% sure what my future in Toronto was going to be. So the timing of it was perfect. And when Paul Graham gave me that call in June of 2011 and said, "Would you go to Winnipeg?" There was a level of excitement, and it just kind of carried on. And then as we know, things don't happen quickly in the hockey business in the summer, and it kind of dragged and dragged and dragged. And then finally, I picked up the phone one day, and TSN kept saying, "Yeah, we need to announce this one of these days." And I finally picked up the phone one day to Scott Brown, and I said, "Should we be talking about things?" And he says, "Yeah, I think we should." Yeah. And and then it got announced after that, and came in for that weekend where they had the jerseys on display with the 4 players at 17 wing, and it went back to Toronto, came back, and away it went from there. But just lots of great memories. But I think all of us in this province we have so much. I mean, when you look at the backgrounds of people in this province, everybody basically worked hard for everything that they have, whether it be rural Manitoba, whether it be working at the steel plant, whatever it was. I think all of us, probably everybody on the prairies, I think we all had to work very hard to get what we have.
Yeah, no doubt. Shauna wasn't the only one having trouble with the waterworks, as we know, Dennis, on the weekend.
Yeah, I'm with you. Yeah, I was there. There were some tears. I think somebody was saying Gary Gurniak, who's been up in that booth with me, Double G, for since day one. I accused him of cutting onions, I think. So parts of the thing.
Right on. So Flin Flon, and how did that help shape where you ended up going to, Dennis? Right? I mean, anyone who's worked at those levels knows how valuable those times are. But what were the biggest things that you took on the ladder up to where you eventually got to?
It's interesting how it's all timing, and I've been fortunate that right place, right time a number of times. I mean, the coach and general manager of the Flin Flon Bombers at that time was the legendary Patty Ginnell. And, Flin Flon had a lot of success. Bobby Clark had just left. Reggie Leach had just left. Chuck Arneson was there. Gene Carr was there. Blaine Stoughton came, and on it went. And Kenny Baird and lots of very, very good hockey players. And it was a kind of the Wild West at that time. And that was Patty's trademark as a coach and GM, is that you were not going to intimidate the Flin Flon Bombers. And it was such a unique setting up there. You had the Whitney Forum where the fans jumped in the visiting team's dressing room. Inside, it sounded like there was an earthquake. You had Hudson Bay Mining and Smelting Company, which basically so much of the town revolved around the success of that. There was a strike at the mine shortly after I started working. I was the newest member on the staff. They were told to get rid of a staff member. That was going to be me. And then something else happened and an opening was created, and I stayed, and it kind of went from there. And then turns out Patty Ginnell, little things again, the old radio dials. We were 590 in Flin Flon. Saskatoon CFQC was 600. So it was the old turn the dial. And Jack Sandberg, who was working in Saskatoon, they were looking for someone to join their sports department. And he didn't have it quite on 600 one day, and he picked up my sportscast in Flin Flon. And so that's where that got started. So on to Saskatoon. Patty Ginnell, in the meantime, buys the Victoria Cougars. After 2 years in Saskatoon, Patty phones me and says, "You want to come work in Victoria?" That's where I kind of got out of media went to work for the Victoria Cougars, still did play-by-play. And I'll try and give you the quick version here. Patty now had a buyer for his team in Victoria. I was going back to Manitoba for my brother's wedding. The day the sports director resigned at CFQC, they offered me that job. I went back there. That's where I met my lovely wife, Beverly, and got married there. And then I went to work for the Saskatoon Blades. And probably the biggest springboard in my career was the '89 Memorial Cup in Saskatoon that I chaired with such a great group of people in Saskatoon. And I can go on and get into the Seattle Memorial Cup, but I'm not sure we have enough time. There was sidebars to that all over the place, but I think the Saskatoon Memorial Cup was probably the springboard because all the NHL teams were there, and all the NHL teams. I chaired the Memorial Cup. I emceed the banquet. I emceed the awards presentation, and that kind of got my name into the NHL circles, and met a lot of people there that I still kind of keep in touch with.
Dennis, you touched on, kind of getting into the hockey side of things. Started out when you were in Victoria, and you go on to become, general manager, GMing in Tri-Cities. I remember one of the first times I met you, I was fairly intimidated. I was starting this beat. I was one Sportsnet guy. There were dozens of TSN guys. And I was talking to you, and then you started talking to me about your time GMing and a bunch of these players that, you scouted and brought and put into the NHL. And I was like, what am I up against here? This is crazy. These guys do it all. And then you kind of realize that, no, it's just Dennis does that because Dennis is special and he's phenomenal. But I wonder for you, if you can go back and remember going on the hockey side of it. You start out, you're just calling games, and then all of a sudden you're starting to make decisions for franchises and starting to affect the future of young men's lives. And I just wonder what that process was for you. Was it intimidating to get into that? What made you feel like you could dive into that, and why did it work?
So keep in mind that the media business was way different back then. I mean, we're talking years ago where you didn't get highlights of games on your late night sports. You had to wait for the next day to get highlights of NHL games on, and that shows you how far we've come in this industry. So when the opportunity came, there was a big change in Saskatoon with ownership, and a gentleman by the name of Darryl Lubinicki, who's still a very dear friend of mine, became coach and general manager. And we were on the West Coast. And we had an off day, and it was kind of drizzling, but it was warm. We went for a walk, and he said, I can't do this by myself. He said, would you come and work for us? And I was, even with the previous regime with Jackie McLeod, I was helping out. I was arranging some meals. I was making up rooming lists and for the team and those sorts of things. So I didn't think about it very long. I thought it was going to be a great opportunity to do something different. And that's where it was. I went to work for the Saskatoon Blades. So that would have been early 80s and kind of went from there. And just all aspects of it. And I'm a bit of a hands-on kind of guy. I just sometimes find if you want to do something, it's easier to do it yourself than trying to explain to somebody else to do it. So I did everything. I mean, I did sales. I did promotions. I remember stuffing programs with player pictures and whatever it took. But then also that's where I kind of started into a little bit of going out on some scouting trips and doing some recruiting. I stopped doing play-by-play for a while. And then a few years later, I got back into that and I picked up on play-by-play again while I worked for the hockey club and, kept the stat sheet at the same time with face-offs. And, I'd always wonder how accurate they were, but if we ever did videotape a game, you'd go back and watch it. And then again, it kind of, where it took off again was when we moved into the new building in Saskatoon. I had been out of broadcasting, but then when we opened up the new building in '88, Telecable in Saskatoon wanted to broadcast the game. And our people said, yeah, you can. It was Darryl Lubinicki said, you can, but Dennis has to do it. And you're going to pay him $500 to do it. And that was after that, the owner of the team, Mr. Nate Brodsky, and a terrific gentleman who's passed away since, phoned me the next day and said, we need to talk. And I went and talked to him, and he says, we got to get you back on the air. I've had a bunch of calls of people saying, you got to get Dennis back doing games. And so then next year I stayed working for the team and got back into it. So, and then the opportunity came. Seattle was having the Memorial Cup. So they got a hold of us and said, hey, would you move to Seattle? Again, another opportunity that arose. And I went to Seattle. I was assistant general manager there for a couple of years with Peter Ranholt. And then the 89 Memorial Cup, or the 92 Memorial Cup in Saskatoon, or in Seattle, that's the one that just kind of got messed up a little bit. Ended up being a great event. We had two things happen. Save the Mariners campaign started, so a lot of the big sponsors that had designated dollars and sponsorships to us for the Memorial Cup pulled back. And then during the Memorial Cup is when the Rodney King riots happened in Los Angeles. Seattle and LA were playing in the NBA playoffs. They had to reschedule a Seattle game. They had precedence in the building. We had to move one game from the bigger building back to the smaller building. It was Ontario and Quebec. Our season ticket holders were special. They gave up, they gave up their tickets, so we could use them for people that were in town to cheer for their team. So we got it done. And in the end, it was a real good event. The one in Saskatoon, what was tough there is we lost in overtime to Swift Current. It was the second time all year we had lost a game when we had a lead after 40 minutes. So that was, a little bit tough to take at the end of that game. But then on to Seattle, and then Peter Ranholt moved on. And then that's when I got offered the opportunity to become a general manager in the Western Hockey League. And I basically just decided, you know what, I've been around this game a long time. It was either time to keep fishing or cutting bait. And I decided to fish and got that opportunity. And 2 years there and some different circumstances. You have to wait for the book on that. And ended up in Tri-Cities. And then after one really good year there, I got fired as general manager there for, again, some various reasons. And I'll clarify that we did have a very good year on and off the ice. Financially, it was very good as well. So really didn't have anything to do with performance. And then again, timing. Got a call from some friends at Edmonton saying, hey, the Oilers are looking for somebody. So, and that was my way to the National Hockey League. But I really enjoyed being a general manager, going out and scouting young players, watching them develop. I always loved training camp because you saw these players in spring, and it's amazing how players grow during the off season. And then to see the same player that you saw in spring come to your fall camp and just see how he's grown and how he's matured. That was really the fun part of it. And there was the ugly part of it where you had to make your team better. So you had to make a trade. I mean, there was times when players came in a better situation for them. If they moved someplace else, those weren't as hard to make. But to make trades when you're dealing with, I tried to bring in, and I think they did eventually bring it in. I tried to bring it in the Western Hockey League where you didn't trade high school players. Once they were done high school, a bit of a different situation. And we did have it in for a little while. And, unless the player came in and said, hey, get me out of here. But that was the hard part. But other than that, I enjoyed meeting with billets, knowing that these people were going to be so important to the lives of these young people, the schools, meeting with them, making sure that everybody was on board. I enjoyed all of that. It was lots of work, but I loved it very, very much. And when I got out of hockey and back into broadcasting, it didn't go away quickly. There was a lot of years where I missed the day-to-day adrenaline rush of being a general manager, knowing that if things were going good, you had a hand in it. And if things weren't going good, it was up to you to try and fix it.
I know you love that scouting element, Dennis. Who's the best player you found over the years? There's obviously a lot of them. But
that's a hard question because I wouldn't say that I found that player. I pushed for Patrick Marleau. I pushed hard because when we drafted him out of Bantam, he wasn't very big, but I remember going to a tournament in Saskatoon, and I went down to ice level for the third period because I wanted to get a real close look at Patrick Marleau. And he knew where the puck was going before it went there. And just a lot of little things. He skated well, but he wasn't very big. So that was a battle in our scouts meetings, saying, hey, is this guy big enough to be a Seattle Thunderbird? Seattle Thunderbirds kind of had this New York Islander reputation a little bit, that if you weren't a certain size, you couldn't play. And that's how Jeff Friesen kind of slipped through a lot of teams' cracks. We were starting to use computers at that time, and Jeff Friesen's rating that should have been 94 came in at about an 87 because of his size. So we eliminated size. I said, I don't need a computer to tell me how big somebody is. I can look at the scouting report. It'll tell me how big somebody is. So Patrick Marleau would probably be the best. I mean, you could argue that it wasn't a good pick. He went to Seattle and lit it up for 2 years and was gone to the National Hockey League at 18. But and the other, I'm not going to take credit for any of them because there was too many of them. But to see Wendell Clark decide whether he was going to come to junior or whether he was going to go back to Notre Dame and go on to college, to see him come to Saskatoon, and then later on Brendan Witt as a youngster, and just so many good players, so many good people. But back to where Sean started this thing, there was parents that give them credit. I mean, they trusted us. When we told Brendan Witt's parents that 16 years of age, he's going to leave Humboldt, Saskatchewan, and come to Seattle, Washington, and we were going to make sure that we take care of him. They trusted us, and it worked out very well. That's sometimes the part that gets forgotten in all of this. Is there is a commitment from the player to come, yes, but as an organization, you better have a commitment and you better follow up on that, because you owe it. You owe it to the parents of that kid.
I love hearing you talk about this stuff, because when you said that you had a hard time kind of getting the GMing out of your blood for a couple of years, I can see why, right? I can see the passion that you have with that. Now, the interesting part about that is you lose out on that GMing opportunity by going to the bigs, right? And I'm wondering if you would have gone back at that moment and told the young Dennis who started out in Flin Flon he's going to the NHL, that would have been a huge moment. So I'm wondering what that was like for you when you kind of finally hit the big leagues and were calling games in the NHL.
Well, there was times, and it's changed again now with the salary cap and everything else. You have to be way smarter than what I am to be a general manager or an assistant general manager in the National Hockey League. And when I first went to Seattle, there was actually this talk way back then that Seattle might be getting an NHL franchise. Ooh. And part of it was I thought, okay, geez, if I get my feet in the door there, if it does get an NHL franchise, then I can just make the transition to the NHL. Well, that didn't happen until a couple of years ago here. But it was a big transition, and so then I go to Edmonton, and now I got to try and connect dots. If I'm the job opening for play-by-play at CFRN in Edmonton, and I know Glenn Sather from the hockey world a little bit. Stu McDonald, who I think Weber knows for sure from his days in Regina, was working for the Oilers. I get a hold of him, and he connects me with the general manager of CFRN, a gentleman by the name of Fred Philthott. And he tells me, he confirms that, yes, we're looking for a play-by-play guy. And so right then, I put that in motion, and again, nothing happens quickly, but and there's a whole bunch of little interesting stories. It's amazing I got the job because I screwed enough things up to not get it. But I got that job, and I'll always remember the Edmonton gig because it was the first NHL. I remember LA and played a couple of exhibition games in Seattle. One was against Detroit, one against Vancouver, and we did those games for Washington Cable. And so that would be kind of the first crack at the NHL. Jets had training camp in Saskatoon when I was there, so you were kind of around it a little bit there. But to get into the NHL and finally, Peter Pocklington, who owned the Oilers, had to kind of sign off on it. He was over in Europe. Again, these were the days where you didn't just pick up a cell phone and call somebody over in Europe. So we had to wait a little bit of while to kind of get everything finalized. But you walked into that press box, and called your first NHL game, it's, for, again, went all the way back, and I took the long way around it by getting out of broadcasting for a while. But back to when I was a kid, that was the goal. The goal was, and maybe it didn't seem realistic at the time, but as I got older, it certainly came to fruition, and I got to be an NHL broadcaster, and it's a special place to be. You guys know it. You're involved in it on a day basis. It's the best league in the world, and to be part of that is something special.
What do you remember about that first game, Dennis?
I think I called Sergei Krivokrasov Sergei Kravakrisov. So I kind of remember that. But you know what? It was good. It was, you know what? You just, again, you get comfortable, you prepare, and I've always had such good analysts to work with, and I'm convinced maybe there just isn't any bad ones. So you hear some stories about some, but I was really lucky. That was a Molestar production at that time, and our analysts were John Garrett, Harry Neal, and Greg Millen. And I remember walking into the Buffalo, the old Odd. That was the first road game, and the analyst was Greg Millen. And I remember him walking into the rink and going up and introducing myself to him, and away we went from there. And then, I remember my first game with Harry Neal. It was actually in Winnipeg, and it was a Friday, Sunday, I believe, and Harry was the analyst for both those games, and that. But even then, you kind of, there was no charters back then. You traveled commercial, but you still, every once in a while, you had to kind of stop yourself and say, you're in the National Hockey League, and it's a special place to be. And I've loved, I think it's 27 years, I guess, since I got that first job in Edmonton. We missed 1 year in Toronto because of a work stoppage. So 2 years in Edmonton, CFRN lost the rights. And the next year there was only like 11 games on television. I was going to cover Eskimo practice and got a phone call from Molestar saying, would you move to Toronto? And that started that. And of course, 13 glorious years with Jim Ralph as my analyst in Toronto, who's as funny as there is out there, and the laughs we had, Joe Bowen, Harry Neal, Greg Millen. I mean, we had Paul Hendrick. We had a great crew there that, we were on the charter with the Leafs, and on the charter, I'll tell you what, you stay in good hotels, and there's always plenty of food around. And then when the opportunity came back here, it was, we talked about that before, it was special.
Yeah, from the media, don't we say the NHL stands for the Never Hungry League? Always a lot of good
and that
food
is
around.
very accurate.
I was always interested in this. I love kind of dissecting different markets. So you spent some time in Edmonton, you spent a ton of time in Toronto, and you spent a lot of time in Winnipeg. What are the differences that a broadcaster needs to be aware of to connect with the Oilers audience, to connect with the Leafs audience, and to connect with the Jets audience?
I don't know if there's a difference with the audience. I think what's happened is the evolution of social media, where so much of what you say gets dissected, whether it's good or bad, gets dissected and gets out there. You're no longer talking to just the person who is watching the game on television or who's listening to the game on radio, because somebody's going to tweet something, and now somebody's going to put a little clip out there of something you said during the game or did during the game. And so you're no longer talking just to that audience. And of course, over the years, you've learned that you have to be careful with what you say. I don't think I've ever said anything that was derogatory. I learned at a very young age in this business that there are parents of other players on the other team listening. And it was a valuable lesson. I was doing games in Saskatoon. We had a powerful signal, and you would say something about the other team's player who was maybe trying to intimidate one of your team players or whatever the case was, or did something that you thought was kind of off the charts a little bit and made what you thought at that time was some smart comment. It was a smart comment, but you can add a 3-word letter behind it because that's what it was. And then I ran into a parent at a game and said, why would you have said that about my son? And it was such a valuable lesson. And I took it to heart. And I think I realized very quickly that there's parents of both teams listening to your broadcast, and you still favor the home team. You have to, but I think the biggest change is over the years you're no longer just talking to the people that are watching or listening, but you try and connect. You try and keep them as entertained as you possibly can, and you just hope that it works.
Dennis, just how did the opportunity to read the lineup come together on Sunday, and what was that? What did that mean to you?
Well, I was just getting ready to leave the house here. It was 10 o'clock. I usually leave about 5 to 10, usually about 3 hours before the game. I head over to the Canada Life Center, and I got a text from Scott Brown right before I left the house saying, "Hey, do you want to read the lineup?" And so I said, "I'm just on my way to the rink. I'll let you know when I get there." He says, "Well, what do you think?" And I says, "Well, I'd like to do it, but I need to kind of get a time frame on this thing." And for some reason in my silly head, I was thinking 8 minutes before warm-up, because he had mentioned 8 minutes. And then, of course, so I said, "Yeah, I'll do it." Because I thought, okay, that won't conflict with our pregame show. Well, of course, as I'm driving to the rink, the light goes off, and I realized, no, it's not 8 minutes before warm-up. It's 8 minutes before the game. So now I get to the rink, and I start checking what our lineup is for the pregame show, and I realize segment 2 starts with Brian Engblom, although it just said surprise on my roster sheet or my script. There's lots of surprises from Kevin Pratt, and so I'm looking at it saying, well, this isn't going to work. So I talked to Kevin Pratt, and he says, "Yeah, we can't change that segment." So I we're down in the coach's office with Kevin Sawyer, Sarah Lusky, Jamie Thomas, Paul Evans, and myself, and Dave Lowry. And Dave Lowry says, "So are you doing it?" And I said, "No, I can't. It conflicts with the pregame show." Sarah says, "What are you talking about?" And so we go over it, and Sarah says, "We're going to make this happen." So then she starts that ball rolling with Kevin Pratt, and they get a hold of the crew and say, "Okay, if everybody's ready to tape this segment at noon, we'll tape it. We'll tape the second segment." So that's what we did. We taped the second segment at noon. That freed me up after we were done our first segment at about 22, somewhere in there, maybe a little bit later. And went down, and I got the roster about 90 seconds before I walked into the dressing room. Gregor Buer went and got the roster for me, and I'm looking at it saying, "Okay, what do you want to do? Just do you want to announce the names, or do you want to kind of say something here or whatever?" And really, when I walked in, I still wasn't sure what I was going to say. And then as I started, and I meant the first part especially, I meant all of it, but the first part, because of back to where we touched on earlier, I saw Nikolai Ehlers come in as a kid. I saw Kyle Connor come in as a kid, and I use the word kid, in all respect. Josh Morrissey. They came in as youngsters and young boys out of junior, and to see them develop into the people, or college in Kyle Connor's case, but to see them develop into the people and the players that they have over the years goes back to what I said about how I enjoyed training camp, because you saw such a difference in players from the end of one year to the start of the other. So I meant that part of it, and then it was on to the player introductions, and I thought, okay, what am I going to say about each one of these? And it was just kind of the first thing that came to mind. But I do thank the Winnipeg Jets for the opportunity, and then certainly thank everybody on our broadcast, for just kind of going out of their way to make sure that this could happen.
Dennis, you've got such a great voice. You've got such great cadence. You've got such a great feel for the game. One tiny little thing, and maybe only broadcasters see this, but the moments in the game where an analyst is talking over the play, or a host like myself is talking over the play, you cut them off in a very gentle way. There's so many things that you do really good. I'm glad you brought up the story, though, about talking about, a player from the other team in junior, and the parents saying, "Why would you talk about my son like that?" Because what I take from that is you learned that was a lesson in balance, right? And being balanced about the players you talk about on the ice. I think you do this better than anyone I've ever heard, especially for a local broadcast. But when you talked about the Jets, you never did so in a way, and a lot of other guys who do teams do this, that I never felt like you were selling me a bill of goods. I never felt like you were telling me something about the Jets, because to a degree you work for the Jets and you don't want to. I always felt that you told the truth at every single moment. And I want to know how you strike that balance so well between working for a team where sometimes you have to acknowledge the hard truths, where you don't want to feel like you're beaten up on the team that you're covering. How did you do that balance so well, where you did so much, you paid honor to both the fans and the players you were covering at the same time?
I lied once. I said I enjoyed Weave's World. Well, that would really have been about the only time. You know what? That's the advantage. That's the advantage of television, because you basically talk about what you see and then let people make their own opinions. And there were times that I've got referees that are friends of mine, so I don't get on referees, or at least I try not to very much. But there were times where I would say I don't agree with that call, or whatever the case may be. But I don't know. You try and find that balance, because we had a game against Chicago where, and we didn't know this, they lost their feed, and so they picked up our feed, and we heard from the Chicago Blackhawks organization complimenting us on exactly what you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
We never realized you talk so much about other teams' players.
There you go.
There's such star power in the National Hockey League. How can you not talk about Austin Matthews? How can you not talk about Connor McDavid? Because you're cheating your audience. You're cheating yourself if you don't. And you're not Winnipeg Jets or whoever you're broadcasting for. That's not the only team that has good players or good people. Other teams have good players and good people as well. And that's what makes the game exciting. And when we were in Toronto, we were talking about getting excited about another team's goal when they scored. And Ken Dryden was the president of the Leafs at that time. And he said in his very professional way, well, it makes the game more exciting. He says, if the Leafs are up 4-2 and the Montreal Canadiens score to make it 4-3, you're in for a great finish. Mm-hmm. And when you think of it, that's true. And as broadcasters, that's what you want. You want a great game to broadcast. And certainly our broadcast is tilted towards the Winnipeg Jets. It is. We kind of go on a 60-40 basis, maybe 65-35, and that. But you have to try and be fair, because I remember Jason Spezza scored a beautiful goal here in Winnipeg. And I was excited because it was a beautiful goal. And I thought, geez, I hope the fans don't say, well, why are you so excited about Jason Spezza from the Ottawa Senators getting a goal? That goal is still on highlight reels when they talk about big goals in the NHL. So you're not just when you're working for TSN, you guys for Sportsnet, you're not just broadcasting to a local audience. That goal call is going to be out there forever. And I think if you want to be professional, I think you have to understand that and accept that.
Reminds me of the Stamkos 60th goal, right? Even the reaction of the fans, they booed initially, and then they got on their feet because they knew it was a special moment, right? I mean, that was one of the coolest moments, in that first decade or whatever. Dennis, I mean, why is continuing on the international side important to you? We know how much you enjoy it, but why was it important to keep that going for a little while longer here?
Well, that's kind of been messed up a little bit as of late, too. We had the World Junior this year in Red Deer that was canceled. Last year's World Championship in Riga, we were there, but we were basically hotel rink. You get to see a totally different style of hockey. You get to meet so many other people. The travel is one thing. You're busy over there. There's no doubt. Like we start on a Friday, Saturday, Sunday, and by the time those first 3 days are over, we'll have done 8 games. But the positive of that is you'll have seen each team twice. So now things back off a little bit. And my days of going out after a game and tipping the light fantastic till 2 a.m. are done. I prefer to come back, maybe have a beer or two, get some work done, and then get up in the morning. And if your game doesn't start till 4, maybe take from 9 a.m. until noon or 1 and go out and do some sightseeing. Try and get as much work done as you can the night before. and go out and see some of the city that you're in. Couldn't do that last year again because of COVID, and we were kind of being watched, and rightfully so. Go back a couple of years to the Edmonton World Junior. They actually had trackers. We wore trackers to make sure that we didn't leave our hotel and go out other places. So those are the downsides of COVID. Hopefully that's kind of all behind us right now. But I really do enjoy the international scene. Partly for the cities that you get to travel to, partly for the different people you see, the different players you see. And then when a lot of those players come to the NHL, you say, yeah, I remember him from Denmark last year. And you know what? I said this in my lineup introduction the other day. I'll never forget the Nikolai Ehlers and the Denmark team when they won their first ever win at the World Junior Championship in Toronto. You were so excited for them. We all remember them jumping around in the room and everything else, and you were so excited for them that I just like the international hockey. I think it makes you realize how good the referees over here are, and that you see different cities, different people, and different hockey. It's very enjoyable. So I'll do the World Championship. We'll do the Summer World Junior. We'll finish that off for the third try for Edmonton. Probably the 2023 World Junior that they just announced today will be in Moncton and Halifax. I'll be in Moncton. And then we'll see what happens with next year's World Championship. If it was supposed to be in St. Petersburg, it won't be there. If they do move it to Lausanne or Zurich, where it was supposed to be 2 years ago when it got totally canceled, I might consider that one, but we'll see if I'm fortunate enough to get to go that one. But we'll see. But it's a different animal, and it's fun.
Ken, you're gonna have to remind me how much time we have with Dennis, because I'm having a hard enough time letting him go from the broadcast. I'm not gonna let him go here.
We're over. We're already over.
I saw somebody earlier.
We're already over.
I saw somebody earlier saying you guys talked about 55 yet, so I think you better. I better hit the trail here. And
before you go, you have to answer one last question before you go. Where did Bang Bang come from, and when did you know you were onto something?
I can't tell you that. I honestly don't know where it came from. I remember when I first did it, there was 2 quick goals. I think they were like 7 or 8 seconds apart, and for some reason, Bang Bang came out, and immediately. Some of the Pritchie from the Jets therapist department made a comment about it, and it just kind of went from there. And then I was glad I got the opportunity to use it on Sunday at a couple of them and that. But I don't know where it came from. I mean, there's some that just kind of came. I mean, the round puck hit it square. That came from baseball. Round ball, round bat, hit it square. So that came from there. Some of the other ones, the Johnny Cash walked the line, and that's just something I made up. And some other ones that, for whatever reason, you hear whether it be a song or a saying, and you bring it into your broadcast, and that you try to not bring too many in. But yeah, I honestly couldn't tell you where Bang Bang came from.
Well, as I say, it was poetic justice that the Winnipeg Jets finished game 82 the way they did, so that you could trot that out.
I'll just put this quickly. I don't know if a Hollywood writer could have written a better script for Sunday. And I thank TSN. I thank Kevin Pratt from TSN. I thank the Winnipeg Jets for their part in all of this. From the lineup to it being even to the point where it was Seattle, where I spent 4 years working for the Thunderbirds. Snowstorm happens, cancels the game, and they have to play it at the end of the year. To the comeback win, I didn't know that my last speech was going to be in-house, and now I'm glad it was. To Bev being there, I don't know if you could have written a better script. I really don't.
Well, I got to say, we thank you, Dennis, not just from our audience for the great stuff, but I got to say, being able to work near you, around you for the time that you've been in Winnipeg, we would have got to be better journalists just by osmosis. But not only were you here with your great presence, but you took the time with people behind the scenes to pass your wisdom on, to make, to lift people up. This market, I am proud of this market and what we do here. I think we've got a really good market with a lot of really good journalists who care. We are a better market because you've been right there at the top like a magnet, drawing us up. And I just appreciate every moment of wisdom we've got to glean from you. Thank you so much for making the time for us, Dennis.
Well, thank you very much. If you ever get a chance to look at the video of Weber making his way to Long Island and the other one where he almost hung himself with the microphone cord, there's some great video out there. But you know what? What you guys do here is special. I think there's a market for the Winnipeg hockey fan to get caught up on opinions and thoughts, and you guys provide that. So thank you very much, and all the best to you guys. And again, thanks for the past hour.
Hope to see you on the golf course, Dennis.
You bet.
See you, bud. Phenomenal, great stuff. That was that's it. We keep talking about like white whales that we land on the show. This is one of those white whales this isn't just a white whale, this is taboo. We weren't allowed to do this, but boy oh boy, am I ever glad we got to. What stands out for you, Kenny?
Just awesome. I mean, not quite as emotional for me as it has been for Dennis, but definitely those onions have been around my seat the last while as well. Dennis has been an incredible mentor and friend to me since he arrived in this market. He's, along with Sarah, Dennis was one of the people who helped get me on TV for the first time on that regional platform on a national network, and he's given me a ton of great advice over the years. And yeah, those dinners around the table are part of what makes, covering the NHL is fun, being in the rinks, but it's, as he mentioned, the moments, it's the people that you're around is what really helps make it such a great place to be. And for those moments, we are eternally grateful. That's for sure.
I just, one of the things that I really loved is working. I didn't start this job until it was, I think, 2014 or something like that. And I started with a lot of the guys. So he's talking about, a guy like Greg Millen, who is a guy who's done tons for me behind the scenes in my career. Just an absolutely great guy. But when he brought that up, I didn't know that they had that history together. But the one thing that I always loved is all the big boys who would come rolling into town would see Dennis, and it was like, you've got a big boy in this town, right? Like, and I always loved that reaction. I said it when I tweeted earlier on. Dennis is an example of our city and our province punching way, way, way above its weight. And the comments that I made to him on the way out there, I'm not just making that up. Like, you get around, I've always said this before, there's no mistake that, a whole bunch of the guys who ended up being, some of the top scorers of all time, played on a team with Wayne Gretzky, because when you're around greatness, it rubs off on you, right? Whether it's those person's habits or what they do or the little interesting they say or the cadence with how they talk, all those kind of things. It was so easy to watch Jets games as a broadcaster and become a better broadcaster by listening to Dennis do it. Phenomenal stuff. I'm glad we had this conversation.
Sorry, I got one more quick one.
Last thing.
For people who have been watching Kenny and Renny, they know that I like to go to the buffet and talk a significant amount. But I have to share my first appearance on the pregame show, Press Box, or In the Box. I think it was the first incarnation. First time it's finally happening. Super pumped. I made it, like what Dennis is talking about. I probably had the two-page foolscap worth of notes ready to go for my 3 topics. And the goal in those times with 3 topics, you're supposed to be able to talk roughly for one. Sarah would tee up every segment, Sean. So you know what the topics are, but you're not reading off a prompter, not doing any of that stuff. The producer was Jeff McLeod, right in my ear before the hit starts. It's a pre-tape, not live to tape. There's the monitor is on a chair, so it's not at eye level. But so you're looking at the monitor, and so the last thing the producer says to me, "Don't be worried about the monitor." Right? So just like the kid, don't grab the cookies out of the cookie jar. So for the entire segment, I'm on with Dennis, I'm pretty sure. but Dennis is not at my eye level. He's at my waist level. And so I keep my eyeballs are going like up, down, up, down, up, down, up, down for the entire segment. And the last part is, again, the segment was supposed to be 3 minutes, and I lasted a grand total of, I think, 2:21. So the betting number was that Ken Weeb would be over 5 minutes for his first segment. I didn't even fill the three full minutes. So, anyways, it was great. Got great feedback, and over the years I did those segments with both Sarah and Dennis, and again got a lot of great advice from the professionals. And hopefully, when people see us on our .ca hits or on our live hits on either the broadcasts or for the regular TV segments that we've been doing, they wouldn't have been happening without those early stumbles. Again, it's one thing to do it in journalism school and all those other things, but man, oh man, that was one of the funnier moments that I will always remember. And again, just the classic Sean, this, like the last thing that comes in your ear from the producer, like they're trying to help you, but it was just one of those things where I'm like, oh my God, I wouldn't have even thought about looking at the monitor.
Yeah. Now you're like, why should I look at the monitor? What do you mean? What monitor? What's the matter with the monitor? What do I need to know? What aren't you telling me?
Oh man, so classic. Such a funny moment. But again, those are the things, like without those moments you don't learn, right? But the key is you try to learn from those moments. And man, it's like I said, Dennis was I told the story the last time about how Dennis talked about the importance of you work so hard to get to that level, that once you get there, you better enjoy it, because otherwise, why did you work that hard, right? That's you don't stop working because you get there, but you work that hard then to stay there. But like you said, we're so lucky to have so many great journalists around our city, and some people have stayed, some people have gone, some people have gone then come back. So just another great reminder of how you and I have been so proud of the community that we've built here through the show and everything else. And like I said, Dennis is a great friend, and I'm going to miss seeing him on a daily basis, but I'm also at the same time super happy for him and Bev. Retirement is going to be great for them, and I'm very happy for them. And like I said, very thankful for the moments that I have been able to share with Dennis so far. And I look forward to more of those down the road, even in his retirement.
You bet. Hopefully we can get out and do one last TSN versus Sportsnet game so I can hop on your back and you can carry me through the I was supposed to match up with Dennis and he just smoked me, so that didn't work. Everybody out there, thank you so much for joining us. It means a ton. Yeah.
Tomorrow we should plug.
I'm going to plug it right now. Once again, cut me off in the middle of the plug to tell me to do the plug is not the best use of our time here, Ken. Tomorrow we are going to be doing a second round tee-up for the Winnipeg Ice. I am COVID-free, and I'm feeling great. A lot of people were talking about it. Thank you for saying that. I'm doing great. It's like it never happened for me at this stage. But work-wise, I'm not allowed to go out and do work until Saturday. I'm in quarantine work-wise until Saturday. Ken's going to be down there. I'm going to be doing that from here. What time are we going on, Kenny?
5 to 6 again. I think we're going to do the same time that we did the first round show, I think. So
come check us out. It's going to be exciting as the Winnipeg Ice just continue heading in a direction I think we all felt that they could definitely head in. Did a great job in their first round series, about to embark on their second. So come check us out at 5 o'clock as we tee that up. Also, we should say down the road to the Manitoba Moose before their first home game of the playoffs, Game 3, which will take place next Wednesday. Kenny and I are going to head down there, and we're going to do a series tee-up for the Manitoba Moose as well. We'd love it if you all joined us. Other than that, thank you so much for joining us here tonight. We are so proud to have Dennis on, and we're so proud to show him off to the audience, and at the same time, we are so proud to show our audience off to Dennis. Thank you so much for what you do. Thank you, Ken. We will see you all tomorrow.